Hello everybody, Jamie here. In my last video, I got a comment asking for some examples of things that ended up being really difficult, really hard. That's going to be unique to your skill set and to the problem domain that you're working in. But I'm going to give you a few examples of ones that I've ran into that I've had to learn a lot and I grew out of that. The first one was really about deploying applications. So traditionally, my background has been in .NET development, and I rely heavily on a tool called Visual Studio. And that tool does a lot of things for you. And one of the things that it's easy to get into the habit of is relying on Visual Studio to build your software, and it allows you to right-click, deploy, or publish. And so I had to grow out of knowing how to do those things in an automated fashion, not relying on Visual Studio. So my first growing opportunity was just learning how to build my software without Visual Studio. What needs to be installed on your build machine? What other tools do you need to have? What version of MS Build? Unfortunately, you almost always have to have Visual Studio installed. It's better with .NET Core, but with .NET 4 Framework, not everything shipped with the build packs, right? So I had to learn that. And then another thing that I had to learn was how to execute all the commands at the command line for MS Build. And that was a growing opportunity for me. Another area along with that was deployment. So if you're in the .NET space, there's a tool called MS Deploy, which you install on your server and you run through IIS. And so you have to get your security configuration set up correctly. You have to make sure that all these things are in place for that to work. And then start leveraging that to deploy your applications. And then the MS Deploy zip file and all the files that go in there were something else that I had to learn how to use. So those are two examples of some really hard things for me kind of early on in my career that now I don't think twice about building software. Doesn't matter if it's C code or C++ or Java. The fundamentals that I learned from going through this exercise for .NET has given me confidence to tackle building any kind of software. As long as you have your dependencies installed and you understand the tools, building it actually gets quite easy. But initially, at first, it's not. Especially if you're using a tool like I did where you're not exposed to that early on. The last example I want to talk about is when I started moving into doing more infrastructure and infrastructure as code. There's lots of things that I had to learn to even be able to automate things in the cloud. So one of those examples would be, how does DNS work? How does networking work? What are IP CIDR blocks? How do those work? Because when you're defining a network in Azure to run a virtual machine or a workload or even in AWS, you have to define your network. You have to define your subnet ranges. You have to make sure there's no overlap. If you're going to have multiple networks, they need to have non-overlapping IP ranges because you may want to peer those eventually. And so I've had to learn all of that terminology and how that works to be able to achieve that kind of automation. And then it's learning the tools that you're using specifically around that automation, right, for those things. So those are the three examples that I can give you to kind of explain what are some really hard things. It's going to be different to what you're doing. It could be totally different. It's hard for me to even, like you see right now, I'm struggling to think of really good examples outside of the ones I just gave you. So if you have any more questions or comments, please put them below on this video or any of the videos, and I will try to do a video with my response. Thank you for watching, and thank you for subscribing. Please subscribe if you like this video, and I'm going to keep trying to keep this ball rolling. I have a few more planned out, so join me in a few weeks. Thanks.